Welcome to Business and Economics. Please can I introduce myself? I'm Vicky Gallop, economics lecturer at the University of Bath, who spent most of her career in business, project managing operating systems for one of the largest computer manufacturers in the world, IBM. I'm taking over as convener of this group, rather nervously, from the marvellous Andreas, who Erasmus. Please help me with suggesting speakers, as you already have. Thank you, Daisy. On the theme, this year's theme of how can business combat climate change? Climate change affects everything from geopolitics to economies to migration. It shapes cities, life expectations, and wine lists, as The Economist quotes. Next month, we have Transition Bath, and Dan Norris, West of England Mayor, is interested in talking the month after that. Following on from last month's excellent talk by Professor Michael Lewis on how big business combats climate change, and what a tricky business that is, we today welcome the West of England Business Growth Hub, presenting and leading a discussion on how they are helping smaller businesses combat climate change. May I introduce you to Marion Britton, Low Carbon Challenge Fund Project Manager, and Daisy Eckett, Senior Enterprise Executive from the West of England Business Growth Hub. Each will make a 15-minute presentation on their part of the operation, then we'll answer your questions and engage in a debate. If you'd like to join us afterwards for a drink at the Raven to discuss further, please do. I'll hand over now to Marion to make the first presentation. Thank you, Marion.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I am the Low Carbon Challenge Fund Project Manager at the West of England Combined Authority, and I'm here to talk to you about a project that I manage, which delivers carbon surveys and green business grants. That one? Can you hear me? That sounds a bit better, doesn't it? It sounds louder to me. Yeah. Sorry. So for those of you who don't know, the Combined Authority, so we're a partnership that's been set up by Bath and North East Somerset Council, Bristol Council and South Gloucestershire Council, and we work really across those kind of cross-boundary issues, things like transport, infrastructure, housing, economic development and increasingly in environment issues. We're also the local enterprise partnership, and that includes North Somerset. So a lot of the projects that we run will cover those 4 areas, including the ones that I'm going through today. So this is our strategic context. So we've got a climate and ecological strategy and action plan that gives us a very ambitious target of getting the region to net zero carbon and to promote nature recovery and halt decline by 2030. So that's not, obviously, that's not a requirement just for the Combined Authority. It's about the local authorities, it's about business, it's about householders trying to really make a difference to climate change. We've built that strategy up based on a lot of evidence and strategies that's happening nationally and internationally. So we've had COP26, we've had the Paris Agreement, which is aiming to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. I think we're currently about 1.1. So it's a very timely challenge. So the money that we have for our Green Business Grants programme comes from 2 sources. So from the European Union, it's money that's still available to us. It was part of the Brexit deal because there are a number of projects that were still in progress. So we're still delivering that money to the end of the programme. And some money from the West of England Combined Authority itself. And both of those pots of money, whilst they're about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, they're also They've got an economic development element to them. So very much about supporting small and medium-sized enterprises. And for the West of England funding, that's really about helping businesses to recover from the pandemic. And we'll look at how the Green Business Grants can help businesses do that. So, what you just said, Daisy, has happened. So we've got the boxes. Let me see if I can move that.
If you click on the down arrow at the bottom of the box, it might minimise it.
No, just shows me more people. Hopefully you can see the. Thank you. Live IT support, I love it. So this was our Green Business Grant offer that we had available last year. So we had a 6-month grant window. We're offering businesses up to 15k. They would have to match that cost, so either 50, 60 or 80%, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute. So the grant was for energy saving improvements to buildings and equipment, open to small and medium-sized enterprises in the West of England, and those that were VAT registered, so kind of established companies. And in total, we've had a 1.7 million pot up until this point. So this is what I meant by the different grant intervention rates. So we had lots of measures that we just gave a standard 50% grant for, and then we had a higher rate for some measures that we wanted to incentivise. So they're not particularly strong markets, and not many people are using heat pumps. Solid wall insulation is very expensive. Mechanical ventilation heat recovery is not very well used. So just a little bit more incentive for some things that we felt needed it. So what are the benefits for businesses? So first and foremost is about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Lots of businesses come to us and say that they wanted to do something around their social responsibility program on climate. So, that as individuals, as organisations, we all need to be taking action to reduce carbon emissions. Second to that, I would say reducing utility bills. So not only just reducing costs, but also becoming more resilient to those price rises that we're seeing happening very strongly at the moment. So our green business grants are not just about energy bills, but they're sometimes about water bills. So that's why we talk about reducing utility, because you can save carbon by reducing your water emissions. There are maybe some secondary benefits for businesses, so around staff retention. So a lot of the improvements that we do make buildings nicer to work in. So getting rid of drafts, cooling buildings down in summer. Lots of businesses have come back to us and talked about having better light to work in. So if you're a manufacturing business or something like that could be very important. Another benefit for businesses is around attracting customers. People want to buy sustainable products from ethical businesses, and they want genuinely ethical businesses. So they want authenticity. They don't want greenwashing. So it's really important to be able to properly demonstrate that you've reduced your energy use. Larger organisations are looking to make their supply chains more sustainable. So often for smaller businesses, if they want to win business-to-business contracts, then they need to reduce their energy and become more sustainable. And finally, there's a kind of local benefit in supporting the low carbon economy. So installers, suppliers really need to build up that supply chain within the region. So we don't expect particularly small and medium-sized enterprises to know how to save energy unless they are particularly working in that sector. It's a very technical process to work out what someone's energy use is and how they can go about reducing their carbon. And that's why we offer a free carbon survey to businesses, which is about 12 hours support. So we go out and look at the building fabric, the way the building's being used, the kind of the equipment that's in the building, and we provide them with a bespoke report for their business. And that will also involve analysing their energy bills. So sometimes it's not even things that need grant. It's you know, you've got a very high energy use at the weekend and there's no one in your building. So it's about kind of looking to see what's using energy at that point. So we look mostly at what's called scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So that's fuel that's used directly by the business or energy that's used directly by the business. We do cover some scope 3 issues like water and waste, but that's not the focus for us for our surveys at the moment. So our approach to surveys is to make sure that businesses are monitoring their energy use. So you can't manage something effectively if you're not monitoring it. So you need that energy data to see what's being used. And our first approach is to really look at reducing energy use. So that would be through energy efficiency, like insulation, more efficient equipment. And only once we've looked at that will we then look at things like replacing energy. So perhaps using solar PV instead of electricity from the national grid. So we always want to do that energy efficiency process first. And then lastly, we might look at offsetting, but we really would prefer not to work in that space. So offsetting is paying for some trees to be planted. So you're kind of saving carbon emissions, but it's not in the region. And it's also not saving money for the business. It's not reducing your energy bills. So that would be our last option. So far, we've done 360 reports for small and medium-sized enterprises. That's about 2% of the commercial and industrial emissions in our region, covering 27,000 annual tonnes of carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions, and looking at kind of £5.5 million of annual utility bill spend. So if businesses made all of the recommendations that we give to them, there's the potential to save around 9,000 tonnes of carbon emissions and about 1.9 million from the total utility bills in total. And for businesses, individual businesses, that means about £2,500 a year on average. So, you know, that's potentially very significant for an SME. These are some of the projects that we... Yeah, 2,589. It's probably worth saying that these prices are based on 2020 prices. So they're probably there will be an underestimate because there's no consistent UK average that we can use for our data. So as we're going through the case studies, you can assume that it would actually be more than that. So these are the types of improvements we've carried out. So on buildings, it's very similar to the types of things that you would do to retrofit a house. So things like improved lighting, improved heating, air conditioning, building insulation, that type of thing. It just might be on a much bigger scale. And then we've done some interesting projects around equipment, and they're very sector specific, around sort of breweries, coffee shops, laundrettes, manufacturing businesses. And I've got some case studies to show you in a second. So today, of that 1.7 million pot, we've allocated £1.4 million to 166 businesses. They're having an average grant award of £8,500. And you can see the map there of where we've given grant across the 4 local authority areas. And then we've paid out funding to 85 businesses. So the projects don't take very long to turn around, and we're paying out fairly quickly in terms of the programme. So I've got a few case studies, some of buildings, kind of improvements to buildings, and some of equipment. So this is Pentagon Sports South, which is a manufacturer of school play equipment in Bradley Stoke. So they had some LED lighting. It cost them in total £8,000. And they had a grant of just over 3,000. So I think this was a very early one. So some of our earlier projects had a 40% grant rate rather than a 50% grant rate, which explains these numbers. So lighting is, if you're replacing fluorescent or halogen lighting, you are almost definitely always going to save money and save energy. So you can see there they've got an annual bill saving of over £2,600. So that's pretty reasonable. This one, a consultancy in Midsummer Norton. So they had double glazing for their windows and doors, a £10,000 cost and just over £4,000 grant. So you can see actually their saving is a lot more modest. It's only £250 on their annual energy bill. But this is one where one of those where the benefits are around improving the buildings for staff. So they had a very drafty building, and they're very happy with their new double glazed door particularly. This one was another staff improvement kind of project. So a consultancy over in Portishead, upgrading their air conditioning and also putting solar film on their windows. So they were getting a lot of solar gain during the summer. The building was overheating and not very pleasant to work in. So that cost them £28,000. They had a grant of over £11,000, and they're saving over £2,252 on their annual utility bills. This is a brewery. So as we said, we do like businesses to look at energy efficiency first, but we will fund solar PV. This was a £30,000 project, and we gave them a 50% 15k grant. They've offset their electricity use by 28%, so they're not reducing their energy use. They're using the same amount of energy. They're just not drawing it from the national grid, so they're using renewable energy from their own panels. And that's saving them nearly £6,000 on their annual electricity bill. Smith Consult, so that's another solar PV. That's an office rather than a bigger building. So that was an £8,500 project with a 50% grant, saving them £910 on their annual energy bill. And then the last of the building ones was Kingsway Laundry, who were really delighted with this project and the savings that it's made them. So this was an air source heat pump to replace their existing heating system, which was a gas boiler, and some solar PV as well. So that cost them 23,000, and we gave them a grant of 15,000. So that air source heat pump gets a higher rate of grant because we want to incentivise it, and that's saving them £350 every year. And then the equipment case studies, we've got, this is our Mayor, Dan Norris, out in the Picnic Coffee shop in Bath. I don't know if you know it. So they had a replacement coffee machine, which was saving them 25% on their previous energy use. So a £7,500 project, we gave them a 50% grant, and they're going to save £709 on their annual electricity bill. And obviously all of these are saving greenhouse gas emissions as well. This one over in Clevedon, Paneltech Industries, this is a furniture maker, and they had lots of wood saws, and the wood saws were running all day long, whether they were being used or not. So we were able to help them fund a variable speed drive, which helps them use the saws only when they're needed. So reducing their energy use. And then the final case study is another Bath one. So this is a garage, bodywork. They had an air compressor replacement. I'll confess my technical knowledge of an air compressor is quite limited, but it has definitely saved them some money to have that upgraded. So £7,000 project, nearly £3,000 grant, and saving an annual energy bill of £626.
I'll just ask a quick number question. You've got 44% reduction in energy use. Is that compared to the original compressor, or is that for their entire thing?
That's their total energy use.
So replacing one air compressor reduced their energy consumption.
Yeah, that does seem high, doesn't it?
How do you get that figure? That seems ridiculously high.
Surely it must be just the compressor.
But then how do you itemise the compressor energy use if you work it out?
Yeah, so our technical advisors would say, for the people on Zoom, this is a question about the energy reduction use. The percentage looks a bit high. I agree, it looks a bit high. I may need to check that. So what we do is we take the specifications of the old equipment and the new equipment, and our technical advisors then work out the energy use. You could be right, that might be in error. I will check that one. So just before I end, I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of new opportunities. So we've got a very small amount of money from our existing £1.7 million pot, and we'll be doing a grant window probably February, March to launch that and just try and spend that last bit of money. So that's for the higher rate where we wanted to incentivise particular improvements. And then we've actually got some new funding to go into the next financial year. We've got £2 million from our Green Recovery Fund. So the Combined Authority has set up a £50 million Green Recovery Fund, and we've got new funding from that for surveys and green business grants. And then later in the year, we're going to launch a rooftop generation grant scheme where we're looking for those businesses that have got much bigger roofs, and we can put more solar PV onto them, like warehouses and that type of business. So that's the end of my bit of the presentation. This is our Green Business Grant telephone number and email address, and then I will hand you over to Daisy.
Thank you very much, Marion.
Hello, I hope you can hear me all right. Before I start, I wanted to caveat that Metro and Air Analysis is not yet agreed to give a talk. I do have to
Maybe
ask him first. I will probably get in trouble if this goes viral or anything. So yeah, hello everyone. I'm just on Zoom as well. So my name is Daisy Eckett and I work in the West of England Growth Hub. So we are essentially the business support arm of the West of England Combined Authority. So we were set up in 2015, which is slightly before the Combined Authority as a whole. There's actually 38 growth hubs spread around the country. So we are the sort of the West of England. And yeah, there's lots of others. They all look quite different. So if you look at say the websites for, I don't know, Manchester Growth Hub, we look quite different, but all have a very common purpose. So I'm just here today to talk a little bit more about how we're supporting businesses, specifically with their sustainability. All at very different places in terms of their journey. So some are very early on, some of them are quite large businesses, some of them small SMEs. But we're here to help them sort of understand where they are, what they can do, and just help them along that journey. So some very ambitious net zero targets for West of England region by 2030. So along with things like green business grant and carbon surveys and so on, there's various other programs that I'm going to talk through. It will be really interesting actually at the end to understand a bit more about your roles and links into business, and of course any feedback that you have on the programs that you're either aware of or we've talked about today, because all that intelligence really does help us understand more about what is it that businesses actually need. And some of them, of course, are sole traders, they're not big sort of corporates, they're people who are running a business and actually want to understand a bit more about how they can make an impact. So I'm talking too much on one slide, let me read on. Okay, so just a brief agenda. So I'll just talk a little bit more about who we are and then how we support business growth. Move on to some of the programs as to how we help businesses demonstrate their sustainability. I'm going to sort of finish up talking a bit about some round table sessions and businesses that you're aware of that might want to join in those sessions, just to give a bit of feedback to our funders, the Department for Business, Energy and Investment Strategy. I'm not going to say BAYS, they're called BAYS, but we don't like using acronyms, so I'm going to try and step away from that. So you'll talk about those at the end and further information, and of course, some things will happen. Okay, so as I started with explaining, we are a dedicated business support service for the West of England Combined Authority. So the Combined Authority, as Marion explained, covers the council regions of Bristol, Bath and North and Somerset Bays, and South Gloucestershire. The Growth Hub also covers North Somerset as well. This is just make up the funding, so it's part of the Local Enterprise Partnership, which is business-led, and that includes North Somerset as well. So it's slightly wider scope, and some of the programs, if they're funded by the Combined Authority, don't include North Somerset. Anyway, so our aim is to businesses to grow, scale, develop. Of course, part of that is encouraging them, supporting them to grow sustainably. It's not just growing, it's happening in a way that's sustainable for the planet and ensuring that the business has got some longevity. These things I've listed here are by no means exhaustive as to what we want to help businesses do. So accelerating innovation, we've got various programs that are focused on teams, focused on supporting business innovation. This sustainability, of course, is a very important one. We'll talk more about that on today. So the workforce skills, so making sure that workforces have the skills they need for the jobs of the future. There's going to be what we call green jobs, green skills. What does that mean for companies? Things change, a lot of them are going digital now. What does that mean for jobs? My dad used to be a typesetter and used to make things speak, but a lot of those jobs now are going digital. I'm kind of going off piece a little bit, but the fact is that jobs are changing, and so what does that mean in the landscape of sustainability? And of course, drive business growth as well, hence Growth Hub. As I mentioned earlier, we've got very ambitious net zero targets, so we want to help engage with businesses and understand where they are on that journey and help them along the process. So very, very roughly, our support is split into what we call pillars. I don't want to get too jargon about it, but it just helps us separate out the support that we do to businesses. So very roughly, some of these programs and bits of support we deliver can fit across pretty much all of them, which is why I put sustainability down the time. But Generally, financial and business support, so that would be grant programs and things like that. A lot of business comes to us and people for funding for various different projects, some of which are sustainable, some of which isn't directly sustainable. Things like integrity, we partner with them, support with their business startup, development growth, of course, things like carbon surveys, mental wellbeing support and so on. Tech innovation is not a huge area. We've got various different programs on that pillar. So that R&D, sports and tech adoption, workforce development, making sure that businesses have the skills they need for now and in the future as they grow, and leadership and management. So some programs that we deliver and run, some of which we do the combined authority, the whole scientific growth hub will have a core sustainability focus, and the Green Business Grant and Carbon Survey do that, and they are focused on delivering sustainability results, whereas others will have sustainability embedded within them, all as a kind of part of it. So, for example, one of our programs on tech innovation is something called Tech for Growth, and it's actually a bit of a COVID program where businesses wanted to get online. You know, they had to close their doors because they couldn't stay open because of COVID. They had to suddenly have that online presence. So we developed a program called Tech for Growth, but part of that support is also helping businesses with going paperless, so using technology to reduce all manual processes and get rid of all the paperwork and start doing things perhaps online using systems and software and stuff like that. So I'm going to focus today on the sustainability focused programs. Just to sort of cover off, we work with many different partners to deliver this. We've got internal through the financial authority, the Growth Hub, but we also work with both public and private partners. Some of whom are listed here. So you can see some of the government departments that we work with, and there's various sort of national and local programs. But I won't go into too much detail about those. I'll just pick out some specific ones. So first up, of course, is the Green Business Grants and Carbon Survey. So within the Growth Hub, businesses will come to us, and they'll be of all different shapes and sizes. Generally, SME, we can technically support those bigger, but a lot of our programs are geared towards small and medium-sized enterprises. That's up to 249 employees, and they can be one-person business, sole traders, like actually a large sort of 249 employee businesses. They come to us looking for support, and our job and my team's job is to understand a bit more about where they are, what it is that they're looking for. Some businesses we speak to directly come to us saying, I want to be more sustainable. I saw a program on your website that can help me with putting solar panels on my roof. How can you help? Part of my job in the Growth Hub is a little bit around triage, to getting to know the business, what their core objectives are, where they are, and just doing a bit of an eligibility check, really making sure they're right in the programme. Things like our carbon surveys, they have been open to sole traders, whereas the Green Business Grants currently, I don't know if things might change, Green Business Grants are open to sole traders. So just making sure that we are that initial gate pointing people in the right direction so they don't get disappointed, and helping them sort of funnel into that process and make sense of all that business report out there. Green Business Grants and Carbon Surveys we've managed to provide a fantastic offer, and businesses get very excited when we talk about it. So that's a great one we can do. So another key program that's being around terribly with microphone, sorry. Another key program geared around sustainability is a program called Skills for Clean Growth. So this is part of what we call our Workforce for the Future program. So Workforce for the Future isn't a dedicated sustainability program, but one of the partners on it, so University of West of England, in partnership with NatWest, are delivering what's called Skills for Clean Growth. And this is to help SMEs get the best skills that they need to deliver on the rest of the net zero ambitions and moving for inclusive growth. And that will be things like learning about existing low carbon practices, evaluating carbon status, and the skills required to implement those business practices. And of course, then putting an action plan in place. And that link provides on the bottom there, training workshops, provides details of a series of free training and development support workshops that businesses can go on. Some of them are things like carbon measurement and reduction, Clean Growth 101, which sounds great, and waste management and things like that. So businesses do want to, they don't know where to start with it. I think, how do I reduce my waste? What is clean growth? What does that mean? How do I measure my carbon? How do I reduce it? that could be a good place to start initially, just to sort of do a bit of learning around the terminology. Make Smarter is a program, it's actually a national program that started up north, that was piloted in the Midlands and the North of England, that we've now adopted for the rest of England. It's actually funded through the West of England Authority though, rather than how the program's funded nationally. But essentially, the program is around how businesses can utilise digital technologies to improve business performance and efficiency. And of course, a massive byproduct, if you like, of this is in things like reducing waste. So if you're producing something more efficiently, there's less using less materials, for example, less energy, and of course then the waste that comes out of that. It could be things like businesses, wanting to digitise their documentation, for example, or utilise VR and automation. So if there's got a construction site or something like that, rather than everyone having to be there, you can utilise VR to visualise what it might look like. And things like that. Reducing defects, reducing component weight, which is the area that can be transport costs and so on. But Make Smarter is a program that we're working with the National Composites Effort Centre on this one, and also the University of England with a package of support. So we have a digital engineering and technical advisor that works with us in the National Composites Centre. Andrew, who delivers these what we call diagnostic sessions in the business, and just finds out a little bit about where they are at the moment, where they are in terms of digital. Some businesses are quite at that really early stage, everything's manual spreadsheets. Some are actually quite far away along the information journey, but they might just need some help to get to that next stage. So find out a little more about the business, where they are. The next step is these one-to-one sessions, and they're sort of like 2 hour, in fact 4 of those sessions that they can go on to support in depth about robotics, automation, the things that go over my head, but I like to sound like I'm thinking about. And go through those with businesses, make recommendations, and then thereafter there's some grant support that we're bringing out to actually help them implement those recommendations, as well as leadership management support and the option to bring interns into the business as well to help with that implementation of the new tech. Business Innovation Fund, so this is one that has recently closed its 4th round. So Business Innovation Fund is for businesses that are progressing research, development and innovation activity. It provides funding. It's been up to 75,000. I think the last round was between 40,000 and 50,000 with an match. That means the business is required to put in some funding themselves, but the idea behind it is just to de-risk that research and development activity they're doing. Round 3 that we ran had a green focus to it, so it was focused on specific projects that help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Other programs, aspects of the programs are around we've done and haven't had that focus, but of course if anyone does come along with a project that does help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, then that is absolutely brilliant as well. I don't have any specific examples of it because of the intellectual property discussion around this one, but I'm hoping that once it's all the projects are completed, that we'll start to sort of publish case studies in detail on our website, the ones that have been funded. Skills boot camps, this is one that's actually just applications are open now for this. So this is where employers and training providers can access funding to deliver a specialist training. One aspect of which is within green skills, as well as logistics, construction, leadership management and so on. It's free for learners to access, but there's more opportunities that might be required from the business themselves to deliver, depending on their size. But these are great. We've got some businesses that I'm working with that just sort of audit funding to deliver skills boot camps. Generally, it's their own employees that are going on them, but also other employees or individual residents can come and access the training as well. And we've got a whole list of them on our website. But we are opening up another round at the moment, so we're open for applications for other employees that want to deliver training in a certain area for their staff, and just want that additional sort of financial support to do so. I think these slides will be available afterwards, isn't they? Yes. So you can get all the links and information to the session. So that's just some of the programmes. I feel like I've been talking forever, I won't do all of them, but I just thought I'd list out a couple of the other additional areas that we can add close to. So part of our role, as I mentioned, in the growth hub is to get to know the business, where they are, and generally as a business, what their ambitions are to grow, and then we can link them up with the right support. It might be that we're running that support ourselves, or combined with voices in the growth hub, or our external partners who are offering it. Like our programmes, some of this is fully funded. Don't tend to use free because it's usually taxpayer money, but we say fully funded means free for access like our service. Some things might require an element of match funds, so the business has to put some themselves, and others are paid for services. But this just gives you an idea of some of the areas that we signpost with you to. So across those sort of key things of like whether they just want to learn more, whether they want to make commitments like to the UK Business Climate Hub, whether they want to access finance. So green finance to actually put these projects and things into place. They want to take action, they want to do sort of measuring and reporting. Things like equal certification, that's one we get asked a lot about from businesses wanting to actually make that commitment and those pledges so you be a more sustainable business. And I can include the links there if you want to have a little look later. So these are the roundtable sessions that I mentioned at the start. So we ran one last year, it was the Blue Earth Summit, which is sort of meeting a lot of business leaders and those individuals that are very keen and interested in sort of driving that sustainability and moving towards net zero. I put just a couple of quotes that came out of it. So the roundtable session is about 12 businesses that we've been working with at the Western Fund Growth Hub. And we just want to get their thoughts. So all of them want some kind of sustainability journey. And it does sound like a bit of jargon, but they're essentially, they've made some changes. You know, they're aware of what they need to do. They were by no means completed and done what they want to do, but perhaps they started to make some changes. They actually started to educate staff, looking at their own use and consumption, how they can reduce it. So these are some of the thoughts that came out of it. So things like how to separate commerciality from sustainability, legislation using supportive change. I think that one was around Desiree, who works in construction and saying that certain buildings, because of their listed status, you can't just put these upgraded. So my legislation wants to some massive things to change legislation, so they'd be able to rip out all the old windows and to put double glazing in. But it's sort of those open up these conversations, so it's really good to hear businesses' thoughts and that kind of thing. Green finance should be easier to obtain, so it shouldn't be seen as debt. It's something that we need to do, we need to invest in the future. Sustainability projects, investment not on average money. Spending too much time discussing terminology. We've probably heard net zero, sustainability, green. And there's people for businesses that they don't, you know, they're not obeying all of these terms. It just becomes a bit overwhelming. So do we have a sort of we just cut all of that and pick one word that they're going to use to decide to define all of it, and they all have very different meanings. That was particularly seen by some businesses as a bit of a barrier to understanding what they could do. And also finding that last point I put there is important to involve those businesses that want to make a change, but just don't know where to start. And this is where the speaking on to the one we've got coming up, which you might be able to help us with. So our funders, Department of Business, Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, so they provide funding for the Growth Hub and the Combined Authority. They are working on a research programme with part of the Economic and Social Research Council Policy Fellowship. And this is all around increasing understanding of SME priorities in the transition to net zero. What do businesses think? What are they thinking? You know, what's their thoughts? Is it actually I can't afford to do this? You know, if I became net zero or sustainable, I don't have the staff, I don't have the skill, I don't have the money, I can't make my building more efficient, but visible and regulation. You know, what is it that's holding them back and stopping them? So there's a few objectives there. Help inform how government and stakeholders engage SMEs on carbon reduction, and help inform policy development to reflect SME priorities on the issue of carbon reduction where possible. So we're hoping to hold this roundtable I think the end of February sometime. So we appreciate any thoughts, you know, if anyone that you are business owners yourselves, or you know business owners in the area that you can speak to, that we have to join us. As I put there, it doesn't matter where they are on that day. We want to start having those who do nothing. You know, and actually they want to start. They need to start, but they just don't know where to. This is a really good way to kind of look at the businesses and discuss. Finally, then, just further information. So, I'm sorry, I've been moving on, haven't I? There we go. Yeah, further information. So, these just links to our website here. Sorry, let me just take you back to that slide in case you didn't get that one. So, this is the the one that we've got coming up around table in February, just a bit of information there. All the slides will be available, but those are the sort of key objectives and things that we're looking at. And then finally, here's a bit of further information. So link to our website, we've got something called the Business Report Guide. So that Business Report Guide on our website, then we operate, that covers off all the programmes that we've talked about today, as well as lots of others that I haven't mentioned. So all of the business support that we're providing to businesses, and all of that, most of that comes to us. There's a few from external partners in there as well, but a lot of it comes to the authority and profile as well. By all means, sign up to our newsletter and don't bombard. Apparently, I'm going to be in spotlights next week or week after, so you'll hear a little bit more about me. But then we just got updates from the team and things like that and what they're working on. But that newsletter will give you information about the grants that we're holding, next round, things like the business grants and when they're opening up again. So it's a good little, it's kind of go to junk to just make sure you check that. But yes, it's actually a great newsletter and it's not something that's been largely and stuff, it's actually really useful information. Okay, thank you all very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much to both Marion and Daisy. I'll come around with the microphone in a moment. Let's just check the Zoom audience and see whether there's anything in the chat. Do have a seat, Daisy.
Oh, sorry, can I move that one? Here we go. If you can move mine. There we go.
That's the one that you want, right? Might need your help to work this to maximize the window. I guess you could stop sharing.
That's one that's useful to that. You say you're going to look at 12 businesses.
Right, so let's have a chat.
Not in that round table we have 12. So on that particular group, we only have 12. If we was to have one, the table was bigger. So to speak, but we try to do it in person. So it's
right.
So everyone can talk.
Can you come here to? Right. So what was the question again? So we can repeat it.
No, my question is simply how many businesses have been worked with?
Okay, so we work with every year approximately directly hundreds of businesses. We've got about 4,000 or 5,000 receiving our newsletter. So there's a lot of businesses that we're working with. So in terms of the actual businesses that we're supporting, what we call the executives in the team, it probably works out as several hundred every year. For that particular round table that we held, we invited 12 businesses to come along simply because of the size of the table that we had. No other reason. We would have had lots more people along. They were from a cross section of sectors, so all different, like food and drink industry, construction industry, and so on, just to get a real sort of mix of views to add to the discussion. So we'd happily speak to lots more. I think for the next roundtable it'd be a similar number of businesses again, but obviously we're very happy to take thoughts from businesses all the time, and we do feedback intelligence to central government on a monthly basis. That's the Department of Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy. So any thoughts, I can collate everything. We do feed it back, and I hope it makes a difference. So every comment is worthwhile.
Thank you, Daisy. Let's take one of the Zoom questions now for Marion. Does the grant funding energy assessments cover community buildings run by long-established charities who are not VAT registered? And is the new weaker green recovery grant similarly restricted?
So the grant that we've been delivering has not been for charities, so we've focused on incorporated businesses. We are looking at the eligibility going forward to see how we can widen that and maybe pick up things like sole traders, as you said, potentially charities. So we always look at the terms and conditions before we have a new grant window, and that's something that we're doing at the moment. But yes, we know that charities and community groups also have a kind of need for low carbon. Definitely on our radar.
Good. Excellent. And question 2 at the does the Energy Advice Programme advise on enhanced capital allowances?
I have to confess, I don't know what that is. Is there a definition of enhanced capital allowances? From
Could Phil? Yeah, Phil, could you?
I'll just. Can you hear me?
Yes.
When you submit your tax returns, you can offset investments in energy efficiency measures against your capital allowances. So there's a significant tax benefit, and for the last 2 years it's been very high. But it's a bit sort of complicated to work your way through, and I just wonder, well, it should be really part of an energy assessment, because you can save a lot of money on it.
Right. Okay. I'll take that away. Obviously, our technical team is more around the kind of the technical energy saving of buildings and equipment. We don't cover finance, but it's very, very interesting to learn about that, and I'll look more into that.
Thank you. Would it be a good idea if Phil popped his email in the chat so that you could take it away and reply to him directly?
Yeah, sure.
Could you do that, Phil? Can you hear me, Phil?
Yes.
Thank you. Right. Are there any more questions in the room?
Organisations that are attempting to stimulate householders to retrospectively fit their homes to be fit for the future find an incredible shortage of skilled providers. So the schemes you outlined sound really great and impressive and make me smile. But how are you addressing this very major shortfall in businesses that can retrospectively, skillfully fit energy reducing measures?
Absolutely, really key issue. We're doing lots of really good stuff, but at the moment it's too small scale to have a real impact if we're going to get to those 2030 targets. So separately to this, obviously we've been talking about business retrofit. The Combined Authority is also working on domestic retrofit. So we will be setting up a homeowner advice service to take those early adopter households who are really interested in climate. They have some funding to put towards retrofitting their home. At the same time as doing that, we'll be supporting businesses to give them the confidence to enter that supply chain. So some of the improvements like heat pumps or solid wall installation, if they're not familiar to a business, they can seem high risk. So we're helping them get trained, get accredited in those things, and all of those things will be happening this year. We're also looking at potentially kind of skills training for those who aren't employed by businesses, so who need help into a green skills career, and there's lots of interest from people to get involved in that. So we're definitely working in that space. And yes, we need to support that supply chain for business retrofit and domestic retrofit in order to get to the scale of delivery that we need, 100%.
One of the things that was said, I think, was that retrofitting a business is similar to retrofitting a domestic property. One of the things that came across in the very followable, accessible presentation which made was that people were doing perhaps one of half a dozen or 10 actions that would need to be done to make a real difference. So that if I'm wondering if either of you have retrospectively refitted the house that you live in, or the business property where you love to work. That's just a quick yes or no.
I'll let Marion.
No. What I'm driving at is whether our experience is on the same page. Because I know about retrofitting domestic properties, and it takes a list of those you've listed combined to put into one property to make a really significant difference. And I'm curious about why the policy is to do a little bit here and a little bit there, but not do a really grand job.
Sure. So to answer your first question, I live in a very modern house with solar panels and lots of insulation. So I'm very limited, unfortunately, as to what I can do. But it's a great house to live in, very low energy bills. So what we're hoping from Green Business Grants and the survey particularly, you're quite right, is businesses are tending to do one or two improvements, and we might have made, say, 2 to 10. It's very variable, the recommendations that we make. But what we're hoping is what we're supplying is that expertise gap, so that businesses can then plan over the next 5 to 10 years what they are going to do, and hopefully go on to make improvements without grants. And so we show them the annual savings so they can work out a simple kind of payback on their investment. We've got limited funds, so we can't fund everything for every business, but we're just trying to stimulate action and give them that longer term information about what they could do to improve their business.
That sounds very valuable. Daisy,
I was gonna pick up on your first point actually about the skills side of things. Incidentally, I'm married to a building services engineer who does everything in our house. So we're pretty good on the solar panel side of things, but I can't profess to have done a lot myself on the kind of retrofit of our home. But he's been very good at every opportunity, making things more efficient and sustainable. For a mid-terrace, it's not bad going. Your question around the skills side of things. So as I mentioned in my presentation, we are funding things called skills boot camps. And one section of them is green skills boot camps. So just listed out on our website. So basically this programme provides funding to employers and training providers to deliver training in specific areas. So you've got green skills, you've got digital, you've got construction on here, but I'll focus on the green skills. Some of it is completely funded, and some of the employer has to pay a little bit depending on their size. And the whole point is to get their workforce and potentially encourage new people into their workforce to get the skills that they need. Particularly, and there's a big business on here which I'm working with them, and they're listed called Bridges, and they're based in Bath. So Bridges Electrical, and they've taken up this opportunity, and they've kind of put together a whole training programme with this support to ensure that their staff have those skills. They've got very sort of ambitious growth plans and things like that. So this kind of thing really supports that. There is actually, so under the green skills category, there's retrofit skills boot camps. There's something called Retrofit Academy is running, offering a range of retrofit qualifications aimed at people in the built environment to learn more about retrofits, become retrofit professionals. So there's a whole different list of things like this. Skills bootcamp in environmental data science, in AI for environmental sustainability, in organisation sustainability, net zeros bootcamp, skills bootcamp in green technologies. So there's a whole different raft of things that companies are running or training providers to encourage people. And this is free for learners. So even if the employer employer has to pay something, it is actually free for the learner to access, which is excellent. And it's all on our website, and it should be on the link on the slides as well, so you can have a little look through everything that's available.
Thank you very much, Daisy. Any more questions in the room?
I've got some questions specific to myself. I don't know if that's working.
Yeah.
First off is, do either of your setup cover this employment? Does that fit within your jurisdiction? Employment?
No.
Brilliant.
But there is a growth hub that will cover that.
So is there a similar setup, identical setup that would cover that area?
From the beginning.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, so our service covers the West of England region. So Bristol, Bath and North East Somerset, South Gloucestershire, and also North Somerset for the Growth Hub. Growth Hubs cover the whole of England, so not the UK, just England. And if we don't fit in our area, so Broome, for example, I'm trying to think of my postcodes, I think it's just outside, that will sit in Somerset, I believe. So there's a Somerset-based Growth Hub. So if someone comes to us and they've got a postcode that falls just outside, and we get ones from Gloucester, for example, or Swindon and Wilts, or down in Devon, we direct them to that local Growth Hub. Now, not every Growth Hub is doing the same thing. So as I said at the start, if you looked at the website, they say part of the South West, Cornwall, Mars and Scilly, they're not exactly the same as us. The focus is the same to support business growth, and they'll also look at things like sustainability, but I don't know whether they've got a dedicated green business grant support, but by all means have a look at their website and see what they do. Do you want to add anything at all? Is that okay? Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's more specific.
I also saw your technology that you were talking about, PVs and air source heat pumps and things. The thing that never seems to be mentioned, we recently moved house, and this is about the only technology that we can use with our limited green space, is solar thermal. So solar water takes up much less room space if you can't fit a lot of a useful amount of PVs. And an awful lot of the energy that's used is for heating water. But it doesn't seem to be very well promoted in this country.
Yes, it's definitely something that our technical advisors would recommend if it seemed appropriate to the business building, and also if that's what the business was interested in as well. But I'm trying to think if we've funded any, and I can't think off the top of my head, but it's definitely
Uses hot water.
yeah,
and you use it all throughout the year.
it would definitely be eligible for our grants, and really
It just isn't one that you promote.
No.
The air source heat pumps and the
yes, I mean obviously I've shown you a small,
because people don't know that, they don't know that.
yes, yeah.
And also, you talk about double glazing, because we have recently moved into an older listed property. Secondary glazing is extremely efficient and cheaper to install, and can be put into much, older buildings.
So those would be all things that our technical advisors would think about as they were going around a building, and definitely both would be eligible, as long as we can demonstrate a measurable energy saving, then they would be eligible.
Thank you. Your specific questions.
Don't worry about it. Well, yeah.
Outside
I mean, 3%, it's done. And it's just an example of what you make. That's fine. Okay.
So I run a company that basically takes pretty much every single box that you've listed. So I have a 15,000 square foot B2 commercial property that hasn't had any building maintenance for approximately 20 years.
It's made up of 3 different buildings, one from probably about the 20s, one from the 60s, one from the 80s. We are currently in the process of spending approximately in the region of 100k on air source heat pumps, solar thermal LED lighting, solid wall insulation, doors and windows, triple glazing, you name it. Literally everything you ticked off on your list is being looked at. Obviously, that's a great investment. So this would be ideal, especially if you can do that high and match, because 50 grand is not going to go very far, although it'll be, contribution. I mean, yeah, you're looking at well over 100 grand worth of stuff, and even then you've got, it's still a large kind of drafty building, as always been thing. Are there regional people that would do the similar thing to you? And everything you said.
So there would definitely be private companies that you could employ to do a survey. I just don't know what Somerset.
Just during grants, basically. So we've got. I mean, there was no the survey when you buy a house. It's got whatever that survey is called.
So you've got one of those.
No, so there wasn't one with the property, because basically it's due to demolition, so it's pretty low. Loads on the list. We have had multiple people come out to do different surveys on property. Different people give different opinions. Suppliers of different equipment, always spend part of their own equipment, and basically kind of bad mouth other firms that sell either the same or competitive equipment, air source heat pump, electric boilers, so thermal, these kind of things. So it'd be useful to get your services to see which one would actually be. Because it's a bit of kind of like minefield, everything is quite an expensive investment on a property of that size. We don't really know what is the best value for money in terms of the technology to use on the property. The priority that's kind of floating to the top of the list is installation.
So I think that's what our surveys are aiming to do. Is we're independent. So you could run a grant scheme and say to people, rock up with your quote from your lighting supplier and we'll give you a grant for that. But you're not looking at the whole energy use of the building or the business. So that's what we try to do with our carbon surveys, and then we rank the improvements by the amount of carbon that they save. So that would really help you. Unfortunately, you're not in our area, and I don't know what's available in Somerset.
Right. So what's the name of the next growth hub
that does cover through to Somerset?
So
must be your neighbour.
yes, do we know what the Somerset Growth Hub is called?
I haven't got internet.
So I think it's also, there will be a growth hub, whether they are offering services and grants as we do. We were very lucky to get that European funding, and that's given us a kind of head start on some other areas. But it's really worth talking to the Growth Hub, because if there is something to signpost you to, they will be the people to do it. Otherwise, you could get an independent survey from a private company. Yes, I know.
So perhaps the growth hub that would be appropriate for, you could point them in the direction of this growth hub and say, please use your services.
Yeah. We've also got our devolved funds as well as a combined authority, which kind of shows the benefits of having that type of organisation in place, so that we do have funding to put to this sort of thing. But have a look at Somerset. They may well have an offer.
It's a massive job just to do research and look at it and quote it. It's taking me weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
That's what time when I'm not doing my main job. So
yeah,
it's definitely something that I would have signed up to straight away. But,
yeah.
Right. Let's see if there's any more questions on the chat room.
I'll just clarify. It's called Heart of the Southwest Growth Hub. So look that one up. There is a map, it's called a LEP map. My goodness, it's LEP map, LEP, it's a local enterprise partnership, and that lists out all of the growth hubs for England, essentially all 38. So Heart of the Southwest covers
Thank you.
Devon, Plymouth, Somerset and Torbay. It's got quite a big remit. But they've got a supplier database, they've got a list of all of their business support programs, Start or Grow Your Business event and workshops. So worth having a little look. And I'd probably just suggest getting in touch with them and just speaking to someone like a version of myself.
Do you have any crossover?
Do you have any crossover between, I mean, is it worth me getting in touch with them and then getting in touch with you? Is it work like that for
I'm always happy to do introductions. I don't have a direct contact. We do some of them. So we work, for example, with Swindon and Wilts and Gloucestershire on various projects. It's just how it's all made up in terms of the funding and who works together. But I'm always happy to be the person who introduces, and that's kind of what I do for a job, is introduce and connect people. So take the details afterwards. I can send an email.
Any more questions in the room? And let's have a look online. I think there are no more questions there. No, that's it. So, I'd like you please to put your hands together to thank Daisy and Marion for their excellent talk today. I'm hugely encouraged at what you offer, how accessible it is to businesses. I can think of several businesses that I want to put in touch with you immediately, so expect to be rammed with questions. Do you think you could put the contact slide back up again, the one that was at the end of your presentation, Marion, so everybody could take a copy? There was one with an email address or a website?
Yes. There we go. Apologies. There you go.
Ah, there we go.
So that's for green business grants specifically. The growth hub you can find quite easily on the Combined Authority website.
Ah, that's what the CA stands for.
Yeah.
Okay, let's thank again. Right, we're going to close it all down now. Thank you all very much for coming. Please come next month to Transition Day and see what we're doing. Thank you.